Welcome into this week's edition of Cavaliers Weekly here on the Bleacher Report app. The Cavs picked up their 61st win of the season over the New York Knicks on Wednesday. 61 wins, not too shabby for a team that was projected to win just 50 games in the regular season over-under totals. But there's a lot of things going on with the Cavs that I think are worth talking about in this 15-20-minute stream that will impact Cleveland's final 6 games of the regular season. On the agenda today, what's up with Ty Jerome? How hurt is he? How should Cleveland handle his minutes down the stretch and whether or not Ty is a crucial part of the championship puzzle for the Cavaliers? DeAndre Hunter plus the core four has been limited action for that grouping since he was traded to the Cavs. Is that something Kenny Atkinson and company will utilize more of in the future? Plus, can you control when a team peaks, or is that something that is natural and out of a coach and a player's hands? We're going to talk about all those coming up right now, but we start with the Ty Jerome news. He has knee tendonitis. He has missed 3 consecutive games here for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And as the Cavs progress and get closer and closer to the playoffs, Kenny Atkinson has made it clear that Ty may play, he may not play, he wants to play. The question is whether or not he is physically able to play. What we do know about Ty Jerome is that he is a guy that wants to participate every single time he has the opportunity. And Kenny Atkinson told us before last night's game against New York that if this was a playoff scenario, Ty would be in the mix. Ty would be playing for the Cavaliers. He is simply not playing because they're just being a little extra cautious and making sure the knee is 100% healthy before putting him back into action. He said that means he may sit another game or 2. He may sit 5 of the 6 games. He may sit all 6 games, or he could be back Friday night when the Cavaliers head to San Antonio to take on the Spurs. We don't know exactly when he'll be back, but I do know the Cavs need Ty Jerome in some capacity if they are going to win the NBA title this year. When you look at the Cavs' 8-man playoff rotation at minimum, maybe Kenny will play 9, maybe he plays 10, 11, who knows? But when you look at the top 8 guys in the playoffs, you got the core 4, you have Strus, Hunter, Wade, and Jerome. That's your 8 guys that you'll be counting on most in a playoff series. And of those 8, when Donovan or Darius come out of the game, Ty Jerome has the ability to step in and fill their shoes, not at the level of those 2, although he has certainly at times, but he is averaging 19.6 assists and 5 rebounds in games where he's played over 22 minutes this season. Ty Jerome can be an X factor for the Cavaliers, and if he's not in their bench rotation, the Cavs don't really have a guy to bring off the bench who can do that. Craig Porter Jr. maybe, but he's down the line. Sam Merrill's not a ball handler or a shot creator in his own right to the likes of a Ty Jerome. You have, who else can throw? Javonte Green, Isaac Okoro. Those guys are not the shot makers, the playmakers, the creators that Ty Jerome is. So if Ty's not in the lineup for Cleveland, they got to figure out where that second unit creation, offensive movement, and playmaking is coming from. So the Cavs, I would encourage them to be as patient as they can with Ty Jerome. There's no need to force him into the lineup until he is fully healthy. But for a rhythm guy like Ty, for a guy who is so impactful in short spurts because when he gets hot, he becomes a supernova, I would like to see him play at least 2 of these final couple games just to get legs under him before the playoffs roll around so that when he comes back, he's got a runway, a 4, 5, 6 game runway to shake off the rust before the second round of the playoffs, which is when his impact will be truly crucial to the Cavaliers' success. They can get through the first round series and maybe even the second round series, but for sure the first round series if Ty Jerome is not in the lineup. But they're going to need Ty Jerome in the Eastern Conference semifinals and certainly in the Eastern Conference finals and especially in the NBA finals if Cleveland is lucky enough to make it that far. The other big thing we got to touch on today, in the final 4.5 minutes of the second quarter in last night's game against the New York Knicks, Kenny Atkinson unveiled a lineup that I think a lot of us, myself included, expected to see quite a bit of this season, and we haven't. And that is the core 4 plus DeAndre Hunter. Prior to last night, and I'll show you last night's stats in just a second, but prior to last night, the Cavs core 4 and DeAndre Hunter had played fewer than 55 possessions together. And a big number, a big chunk of that 55, it was 53 is the exact number, had come in Hunter's first game when they beat the Minnesota Timberwolves, and he was forced into the starting lineup because Max Strus was unable to play. So that was on February 10th. It is now April 3rd, and it took from February 10th to April 2nd to see that Core 4 plus Hunter lineup in extended action yesterday. How'd it do? Take a look at the numbers for yourself. They were +9 in the 449 the group played together. They had an offensive rating of 150. Granted, 4 minutes, 49 seconds at the tiny sample size, but an offensive rating of 150 would not just be the greatest offensive rating in the history of the NBA, but it'd be the greatest offensive rating in the history of the NBA by nearly 27 points. They had a defensive rating of 66.7. That would also be the greatest defensive rating in the history of the NBA. That's a net rating of 83.3, which is absurd. And a true shooting percentage of 69.7%. Also absurd. It was 4 minutes and 49 seconds. Not a giant sample size, but that was the unit that allowed Cleveland to make a comeback and put themselves in a position to storm the second half and dominate the 3-seeded Knicks. That grouping is going to be a crucial grouping for the Cavaliers in the playoffs, especially against a team like the Boston Celtics. Now, since coming to Cleveland, DeAndre Hunter has split a lot of his time between the 3 and the 4. But when he's the 3, for the majority of his time here in Cleveland, he's been in the front court alongside Dean Wade at the 4 and then either Mobley or Jared Allen. When he's been at the 4, he's just with Allen or Mobley. Very rarely, and it's still fewer than 100 possessions, has that grouping been out there together for long enough stretches to run through offensive sets, to get through defensive rotations, to figure out how they play best together. Now, I've stood firm on my stance that I believe Max Strus should start in the playoffs against every team but Boston. I believe Max Strus is the best 3 the Cavs have at playing off Allen and Mobley screens. I think Strus brings an element to Cleveland's offense that Hunter doesn't. Now, Hunter also brings a separate element that Strus doesn't, and he's a better defender than Max Strus. But because of the lack of spacing and the lack of opportunities to create, I like Strus's pairing with Mobley and Allen more than I like Hunter's on paper. But when push comes to shove in a playoff series, when you need to get stops against Boston and they are making you switch and forcing guys to defend bigger wings like Tatum and Jaylen Brown, I'm going to lean on the 6'8" guy with 7'2" arms who can create off the dribble by himself and is a plus defender in multiple categories over a guy like Max Strus who brings shooting to the table but has been abused by Boston in cross matches in the past. So that's a lineup that I think you could live without. The Core 4 plus DeAndre Hunter, that's a lineup you can live without against an Orlando or a Chicago or whoever in the first round. And I believe you can beat Detroit and/or Indiana and/or Milwaukee, whoever comes out of that 4-5 matchup in the second round without. But when you face the Boston Celtics, they put you in such disadvantageous positions that you need to create your own advantages. And as good as a player as Max Strus may be, he's not out there creating advantages for Cleveland offensively or defensively. He doesn't create mismatches from an offensive standpoint, and he can be taken advantage of if he gets caught on Porzingis or Tatum or whoever. When you have Hunter out there, you have 3 guys with a 7-foot or longer wingspan that you can switch at will with. And you can protect Darius and Donovan in case they get caught on a bigger defender because you have so much length elsewhere on the court that you can rotate and help without giving up wide open threes. Now, it takes a lot of effort, and it's not an easy thing to do, but it's a lot easier when you have the size and length of DeAndre Hunter than a Max Strus. And I'm not picking on Max Strus here. I'm just pointing out the realities of the situation. Against Boston, not just defensively, but offensively, you're going to have guys that can create their own shot. Because Boston switches so often, what they basically do is force you to attack them one-on-one. Boston's whole defensive principle is we're going to switch, and we're not going to do a ton of help. So if you get the switch you want, you can attack it. But we are going to force you to, time after time, eat up the shot clock, play isolation basketball, and beat us that way. And in the past, the Cavs have. Donovan Mitchell in the fourth quarter in Cleveland in their second meeting this season scored 20 points in the fourth quarter, finished the game with 36, I believe. Perfect in the fourth quarter from the field and from the free throw line. And the Cavs were able to knock off Boston. In that 22-point comeback a couple months ago on a Friday night in Boston, and they were down 25-3 right out of the gate, In the second half, Donovan went supernova, was attacking Sam Hauser on the switch at will, and that's where the Cavs have an advantage. So if Boston's going to switch all these matchups, let me ask you a question. Would you rather have Max Strus attacking one of Boston defenders one-on-one, or would you rather have DeAndre Hunter attacking one of Boston's defenders one-on-one? I like Max Strus. I think he's a valuable component of this Cavaliers offense. When I'm taking DeAndre Hunter in that situation 10 out of 10 times, Strus is better off the ball. DeAndre Hunter is much better at creating for himself. And if those are the two options I have to attack a mismatch on Boston's defense, give me DeAndre Hunter. So Kenny was asked yesterday, are you confident that you'll be able to play this lineup together in the postseason, even though they have limited reps together during the regular season? And Kenny's answer was pretty straightforward. Yeah, we're going to have to play this lineup. I know I'm going to have to play this lineup, and I'm going to try and get them some more looks in the regular season so they can problem solve on the fly in games that don't mean nearly as much as a playoff series would. So over the next 6 games, I understand the Cavs are going to rest guys. I'd be surprised if Donovan and Evan and Darius play more than 4. Any individual one will play more than 4. Heck, sit them all if they want. It doesn't really matter. They've essentially locked up the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. Their magic number is down to 1 because of the tiebreaker they have over Boston. So even though ESPN standings say it's a 2-game tiebreaker, the reality is the Cavs have the tiebreaker. It's a 1-game magic number to clinch the 1 seed. The Cavs aren't losing out, and Boston ain't winning out, so the Cavs have the 1 seed. So if you're going to sit guys, you're not going to get the opportunity for this lineup to play. But I would if I was Kenny Atkinson, if I were Kenny, and he's done a marvelous job this season. He should be the front runner for Coach of the Year. I'd be shocked if he doesn't win it. But if I were Kenny Atkinson, I would pick one of these final 6 games. Whatever one you want, except the last one. Maybe it's at Indiana in 2 weeks, or in the fourth of the 6 games. Or maybe it's the game before that. Whatever. It doesn't really matter. My point is, I'm picking one of those games and playing it basically like a playoff game, just to get a sense of the rotations, just to get a sense of, all right, Hunter, you're going to play with the core 4 against this team because we need you in this certain matchup. Figure it out. You're going to get a 5 to 6 minute stretch in the middle of the second quarter where it's the core 4 and you. Go play basketball. And then we'll come back, we'll watch the tape, and we'll see where our weaknesses are with that unit. We'll see what we can exploit in the other team with that unit, and we'll see where you guys naturally flow and work together cohesively. So that's how I would approach it if I were Kenny Atkinson and the Cavs. Will they? Not sure. But that would be how I approach using these last 6 games to get you tuned up for the playoffs. Speaking of getting tuned up for the playoffs, the Cavaliers, despite winning now, well, they lost to Detroit on Friday, so they've won 4 of their last 5. But the Cavaliers are not playing their best basketball of the season. And every team, whether you're the Boston Celtics, the Los Angeles Lakers, the Denver Nuggets, the Thunder, the Cavs, you name it, if you're in playoff contention, your goal is to get hot right now. But the question is, can you control when you get hot? Can you control when a team peaks? I asked that exact question to Kenny Atkinson pregame yesterday. I said, Kenny, every team says they want to play their best basketball at the end of March and early April, but do you have any control over that? What are the variables that go into playing your best basketball on a whim? Is there a flip or a switch that can be flipped that all of a sudden says, we're in playoff mode? And Kenny, as he always does, gave a very insightful answer. Kenny Atkinson thought about it for a second, pondered the question, and came to this conclusion. No, you cannot control when a team peaks. You can prepare a certain way, and you can try and play with a playoff intensity, but Donovan Mitchell isn't missing shots on purpose, and now all of a sudden is going to make shots that he was intentionally missing. No, you miss shots. That's basketball. Darius has to refine his jumper. He hasn't been missing intentionally, and all of a sudden now it's April. Let's start making shots. That's not how basketball works. What you can do, though, is control your intensity. And I thought Isaac Okoro yesterday did a terrific job of setting the Cavaliers up for playoff success. Now, he went 1 of 6 from 3. If Okoro is going to be a part of this playoff rotation, he has to make open threes. If he's 1 of 6 from 3, the Cavs are not going to be able to beat Boston and OKC and whoever else they're playing in those high leverage playoff series. But Isaac came out and put the defensive pressure on New York from the get-go. And there were instances in yesterday's game where Darius and Donovan were picking up DeLon Wright for 94 feet. That hasn't happened much this season. And Donovan told us after the game, he just felt the team was lacking energy. And he was trying to figure out a way to instill and inject them with the necessary energy to come come back from a 15-point second quarter deficit. And he said, well, there's two choices. I can either try and dunk on somebody's head, but they're clogging the paint, or I can pick up my guy 94 feet. So he started picking up DeLon Wright the entire court. And it worked. And the Knicks got out of their offensive rhythm. And OG Anunoby, who hit 5 threes in the first half, started having to work and attack with 6 seconds on the shot clock, not with 12 seconds on the shot clock. So he was only able to get to his first move without having to counter what the Cavs did defensively. And once you start playing defense and you start creating some turnovers and the Knicks started missing some shots, the Cavs were getting out in transition. And great defense was leading to great offense. And all of a sudden, you could feel inside Rocket Arena, the momentum started to shift. And as soon as that momentum started to shift, you could feel that the Knicks' chances of winning that game were rapidly declining. And Cleveland was just a hair away from stepping on their throat and putting them out of their misery. What happened in the second half? Cleveland scored 70-plus points. The Knicks scored fewer than 50. It was an absolute masterclass from the Cavs against New York last night in the final 24 minutes of the game. Everyone who played excellent. Jarrett Allen was dominant down low. Evan Mobley found just enough. And even though his stat sheet doesn't look very impressive, the way he was able to control the paint defensively as a weak side defender made it nightmares. Gave New York nightmares when they were attacking. So no, there's no switch you can just flip and say it's playoff mode, but you can control your intensity. And when you're playing with a certain level of intensity, good things happen. Playoff basketball and regular season basketball are completely different. The final 5 minutes of a close game in the regular season is what 40 of the 48 minutes in a playoff game will be like. And the Cavs this season have been the best team in the NBA in their clutch offense. And they've been one of the 5 best teams in the NBA with their clutch defense. The Cavs have proven they are capable of playing their best in the toughest moments this season. Now we have to see if that 5-minute stretch can be stretched out over the course of a 48-minute game. I trust Kenny Atkinson. I trust Donovan Mitchell. I trust Darius Garland. I trust Jarrett Allen. I trust Evan Mobley to be able to come through in those situations. If they lose, it won't be because they're not prepared. And I don't think the moment will be too bright. Or as Jarrett Allen said against the Knicks in 2 playoff series ago, the lights were too bright. I do not anticipate that being the case. They can get beat because some team plays better than them. But I don't believe it'll be because they weren't prepared and weren't ready for playoff style of basketball. So although you can't control when you peak, there are only certain things that you can control. And that's effort, that's rebounding, and that's how prepared you are for the opponent. And in terms of this Cavaliers team, there is nothing that I have seen over the first 76 games of the season that make me feel that they won't be ready for the moment when it arrives. That's going to wrap it up for this week's edition of Cavaliers Weekly here on the Bleacher Report. If you liked what you heard, come check me out on Twitter at Mike Lucas TV. I'm also part of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show Monday through Friday on YouTube. If you like Cavs content and you don't know who we are, come out and hang with us. We're talking Cavs, Browns, and Guardians every day for 2 hours, starting at 11 a.m. and we go to 1 p.m. I'm biased, but I think it's the best sports show in the Cleveland area. And we're available on YouTube to everyone across the world, just like you're listening here on the Bleacher Report app. If you haven't downloaded the Bleacher Report app and somehow you're finding this in some alternate universe, go download the Bleacher Report app because it is another terrific app to have on your phone, on your tablet, wherever you get your sports news. I'm McNuggets, and remember, as always, go Cavs.